Good afternoon. Module 2, Business Research Methods. So we had seen what is a problem statement, what are variables. Now we will go into looking at what is a hypothesis. You have already done these things in statistics, hypothesis testing and all. So here, as I mentioned, you just have some theory and what are the various aspects involved in hypothesis, right? So first one is, what is a hypothesis? The hypothesis is a formal statement that predicts the relationship between variables. I had given example in the previous session. Predicts the relationship, right? What were the examples we had taken? What is the relationship between satisfaction in retailing, dependent and independent? Okay, there is a relationship between billing procedures and customer satisfaction in retail, like that. Okay, so the first one is hypothesis explains, predicts the relationship between two variables. Next important aspect, hypothesis explanation for the problem that can be tested. It is a testable statement. By testing that statement and getting answers for it, you have solved your research problems. Now you understand the relationship between research problem, variables, hypothesis. By testing the hypothesis, by defining the variables, by exhibiting the relationship between the variables, okay, so you will be arriving at the conclusions. Okay, right. So hypothesis is it's an explanation for a problem that can be tested. Next aspect, what are the various types of hypothesis? Okay, the first type is a very simple hypothesis. There is a relationship between employees' work output and personal life. There is a relationship between employees' work output and duration of work. Okay, so like this, these are simple. There is a relationship between one variable and the other variable. You have a dependent variable, independent variable. What is the relationship between? There is a correlation. There is a thing between these two things. In this itself, there are two kinds. One is just saying there is a relationship. The other one saying there is a positive relationship, negative relationship. I'll give you an example. Consumption of soft drink increases the weight of an individual. Consumption of Ensure increases the weight of the child. Here the relationship is positive. Take another example. Consuming crocin brings down the temperature of the body. Right? Consuming give me another drug's name. Brings down the consuming cough syrup brings down the chest congestion, coughing. Okay, so if one goes up, the other goes down. That is all it is. If you goes more you take, the less, like that. So it is a negative relationship, right? Okay, fine. So that is your simple hypothesis. Then you have a working hypothesis. What is a working hypothesis? Anything that is currently happening. For example, the social distancing and spread of corona, treatment of corona and infection to the doctors, working hypothesis. Okay, effectiveness of online learning for MBA program, right? Online examination for MBA students. Okay, so all these are working hypotheses. You can currently you can set a hypothesis and start working on it. Okay, there is the possibility of conducting online exams for MBA. Is good. So you define some parameters. 90% of the students will be able to take the exams online. 100% of the students should be enabled to take the exams online. Whether it's possible or not, and what are the kinds of variables you will choose and how you will. This is working hypothesis, and it is an empirical hypothesis, and it is a little more complicated than the simple hypothesis. Next is null hypothesis. Null hypothesis says there is no relation between two variables. Okay, there is no difference between the before and after condition. Okay, taking crocin has no effect on the temperature of the patient, right? So this is the null hypothesis, and you should have null hypothesis for any of these aspects. Like for example, there is no relationship between satisfaction of retail shopping and service levels in the counter. There is no relationship. You can set hypothesis like that. Generally, you reject the null hypothesis and accept the H1. Okay, the H1 is actually the hypothesis that you are setting for the study. What is H1? There is a relationship between, there is a difference between. Your simple hypothesis, that is your H1, right? So by rejecting the null hypothesis, you accept the H1, right? So what are the parameters for a good hypothesis? Okay, it should be an empirical statement. Empirical means that which can be verified, that which can be tested, that which can be measured, that for which answers can be obtained. Empirical study. Empirical study is having a variable, collecting data and testing it. So this hypothesis should be an empirical statement. A good hypothesis should be, you should be able to observe and test it, right? Observe the phenomena and test the phenomena. Next, generality and not single occurrence. Okay, it should be a general statement, and the more general it is, the more applicable it is. Okay, paracetamol brings down the fever. If this is accepted, it can be applicable everywhere, right? So it is not the very reason why you are keeping hypothesis is because you want to generalize certain aspects. It should be logical. Your hypothesis should be very logical. Concepts are should be defined very carefully. Okay, concepts should be defined very carefully. That is satisfaction level, motivation level, stock market price increase. It should be very clearly defined. Next, there should be a specific mention of positive or negative relationship. Corona pandemic has resulted in lower prices in stock market in medium size firms, like that. It should have a specific relationship where you are mentioning the positive or the negative relationship. It should be understandable. So these are all the features of a good hypothesis. Next, what are the ways? What are the steps involved in solving a hypothesis? Right? It's just a theory. What will you do? First, you will see the level of significance. What is level of significance? 0.5, 0.1, 0.01. So these are the level of significance. And then you have the level of confidence level. You test the confidence level. You know the regions in the normal curve, both the regions. So that is your level of significance, 0.5. You check the standard error. Check the degree of freedom. Right? And accept or reject the hypothesis. So this you would have done so many, sums. And you don't have to do the sums, you just have to say these steps. First, I said the level of significance. If it is 0.5 or 0.25, okay, then z value is 1.96. You would have done these things, right? So you'll just have to mention those steps. Okay, a level of significance is the probability with which we reject the null hypothesis. Okay, what is p-value? P-value is the probability with which you can accept the null hypothesis. Right? So this is your, step-by-step procedures of how you will solve an hypothesis. So we have dealt with two things today. One is research questions and the other one is what is hypothesis. And I will be sending some 2 or 3 materials which will be the crux. From your end, you should get familiarized with one thing today. Number 1, frame some hypothesis. Okay? 2 or 3 hypotheses in marketing, in HR and in finance. That is the first thing. And the second thing is frame as many research questions as possible in all the 3 areas. Thank you very much.